webinar series, welcome. And if you've come to some of our other webinars, welcome back. Today, I hope that you are as excited about annual campaigns as the girl on this slide. I know that I am. And what I'm really excited today is just to share with you some new tools from BGCA that will help to maximize the impact of your annual campaign. If you're interested in learning more about how to organize an annual campaign, we'll have a webinar about that coming up. That's on Friday. It will also be recorded so that you can view it later if you're unable to attend. A few notes about the webinar format. Please keep your phone on mute. As we all know, the club can be a very noisy place, and that background noise can be challenging for other people who are attending the webinar. If you have any questions during the webinar, please type them in the chat box or the questions box, and I will answer them as we go through the webinar or get to them once we're finished. Lastly, there will be downloads available for you at the end of the webinar, including a PDF of the PowerPoint slides that I'll be presenting today, so that you can go back and look them over later or review them if you have any questions. So with that, let's go ahead and get started. The objectives of today's webinar are to share with you some new annual campaign resources that are available, let you know where to find them, let you know how to use them, and give answers to you to any questions you might have about the Great Futures annual campaign. You've all heard of the Great Futures campaign nationally, and this new initiative will help you to leverage the Great Futures campaign at the local club level. This is really a reinvention and rebranding of the old annual campaign, It Just Takes One, or IJTO. It includes new and updated resources, branding, and materials. So to start, what is the Great Futures annual campaign? Well, before we answer that question, let's look at the Great Futures campaign itself, because this may be something that you've heard about, but perhaps don't know a great deal about. The Great Futures campaign was started because we are facing a crisis in America today. Today, 1 out of 4 kids fail to graduate on time. That equals nearly 1 million kids dropping out every year. 7,200 kids will drop out today while you're at work. 3 out of 10 kids nationwide are obese or overweight. 1 out of 5 kids, 16 million, 1 out of every 5 live in poverty. A recent UNICEF report on child poverty ranked the United States 34 out of 35 developed countries in child poverty rates. Only Romania had a higher child poverty rate than we do. Every day, 15 million kids leave school with nowhere to go. That's more than 1/4 of all school-age kids. And as we all know, when they're unsupervised, they're unguided and they're unsafe. In the summer, that number rises to 43 million kids, nearly 3/4 of America's kids, who don't have access to summer learning programs, who risk falling behind and becoming unprepared for the future. And that's why the Boys and Girls Club have launched the Great Futures campaign. This is the campaign for America's kids. It is an unprecedented mass marketing and fundraising initiative with 2 key goals: empower our clubs to serve more members more often so we can drive greater impact. And second, to position Boys and Girls Clubs as the #1 advocate for America's youth, the thought leader in youth development. The idea is that nationally, the Boys and Girls Clubs of America is leveraging its sphere of influence, its footprint and scale to improve the outlook of the nation by redefining the opportunity equation for all kids. And that's the equation you see on your screen. School plus out of school equals great futures. So even as Boys and Girls Clubs of America is hosting this campaign, you'll see that these goals are also becoming goals that you're having at the club level. Growing attendance. Nationwide, the goal is, by the end of the campaign in 2018, to grow attendance from 400 to 540,000 kids in the clubs. That's the idea of more members more often. I think the most significant impact is in academic success. The goal is to have 568,000 club members on track to graduate with the plan for the future, college or career ready. This is a 13% improvement over national trends, and the economic impact would be $14 billion. Compared to other youth-serving organizations, this impact is absolutely unparalleled. So with these kinds of goals and this level of national attention, it makes sense for clubs at the local level to leverage the Great Futures campaign. And that's why these new resources have been created. So there are several new resources that are available to you. The first you'll be able to download after this webinar, and it's a new Great Futures annual campaign manual. It includes an appendix which has sample appeal letters, sample thank you letters, a fantastic prospect rating tool, campaign job descriptions, a range of gift table, a sample stewardship calendar, giving society guidelines, a donor contact form, and club best practices. And all of those are just right there in the annual campaign manual. If some of those tools that you were hearing, you were wondering how to use them, please join us for the webinar about how to host an annual campaign where we'll talk about that in more detail. There are also some great new materials on PrintWorks. These include a case statement kit, which has a customizable folder, case statement, pledge card, envelopes, and thank you cards. So all of those you can go to PrintWorks, have them personalized with your own club's name and logo, and use those for your Great Futures campaign at the club level. There are also a lot of great new resources available at marketing.bgca.org. So this is just a look at the annual campaign toolkit and what is inside. Again, you'll be able to download this after the webinar. Another example of a great tool that's available to you in the toolkit, what this will help you do is step back for a minute and really evaluate the quality of your prospects and whether they're prospects who are weak, medium, or strong, to give you an idea of whether they're ready to be asked now or whether a little bit more work is necessary. And if you go through a prospect rating process like this, you'll really be well poised to succeed in your annual campaign. Another great tool that's included is a sample stewardship calendar. This is aligned to what's being pushed out nationally by Boys and Girls Clubs of America, so that those efforts that you're taking part in at the club level parallel the great national media attention that's being given to the Boys and Girls Clubs of America, and so that things are very well coordinated club to club. These also coordinate nicely with time of year, so ideas such as sending Valentine's Day cards out in February. So if you're someone who's very, very busy with all of the things that are going on at the club and you just don't have time to put together a stewardship calendar, there's one that's already included right there in the annual campaign toolkit. Another great tool that you'll find in the toolkit is a range of gifts table. We'll spend more time talking about how this works in the next webinar, but you can find this tool in the toolkit, or you can go to fundraisingbank.org to use the range of gifts table. Basically, this is a tool that lets you figure out how many gifts and what size you need at each level to meet your annual campaign goal. From there, you can export your range of gifts table right into Excel and populate in the different prospects that you'd like to work with. This is just a landing page for PrintWorks where you can get these great customizable annual campaign resources. You may have been doing this for It Just Takes One. This is just an update of that, available the same way, the same kinds of tools are available. The Case for Support is a fantastic tool for board members who are doing asking, as well as for your donors who are being asked. It's very professional looking, and it really clearly articulates why it is that they should make an investment. There are tons and tons of great futures resources available at marketing.bgca.org, and these are absolutely free. I really encourage you to go to that website and find out what's available to you. These look just fantastic. They're customizable with your own club logo, and they'll save you the work of having to put them together yourself. So just a few to talk about today. There are these great Moments print pieces. So these are things like posters and handouts that you can add your own club logo in, but they parallel our national organization's marketing initiatives. So you're benefiting from their marketing because yours is the same. Great social media assets and mailing assets that you can drop right into your own social media pieces, or even postcards that you can print and send out yourself. Fantastic campaign media assets as well. These include public service announcements, which if you haven't watched any of the PSAs for the campaign, you should. They're really fantastic. And they're taggable. So that means that there could be, if a TV station agrees to run your PSA for you, They can add your tagline and your name at the end. And one important thing to mention about PSAs, TV and radio stations need to run public service announcements as part of their agreement with the FCC. So if you can build a relationship, perhaps through one of your board members, with local media companies, you can get these things put on the air. And because they've already been put together for you by club marketing, you don't have to do anything more than ask them to add a tag. They're available in English or Spanish. There are 30 and 60-second PSAs, and again, they are taggable. There are great digital banner ads that are customizable, co-branded print ads, so they would say Boys and Girls Clubs of America and Boys and Girls Clubs of your town, as well as billboards, all already laid out, already really professional looking. So what you might be thinking at this point is, all right, why should we use this new material? We were doing fine with It Just Takes One. We really want to just keep doing that. Well, every organization needs to update its branding periodically. And although I myself am a Coke drinker, I thought that I would share with you the changes in Pepsi's logo over the years. You can see there's been significant changes to them over the last, cycle of their life, 100 and some years. The same should be true for your annual campaign. In fact, It Just Takes One is 12 or 13 years old. So it's a teenager, it needs a little makeover, and that is where this comes in. The other key reason for having a Great Futures campaign, again, is to help you to improve brand awareness and understanding in concert with our national campaign. So consumers are starting to become more aware of what Boys and Girls Clubs of America is doing. They're seeing our national ads. This is a great time for you to come in and say, that great stuff you heard about Boys and Girls Clubs of America, it's happening right here in our town. And because you have the same branding, that message is much more clear. Even the very best organizations need a periodic update. This is an old logo for the Boys Club, and certainly that's been updated. So you might have a few questions. First, can we keep our annual campaign branding the same as it was? Do we have to have a Great Futures campaign? You do not have to have a Great Futures campaign, and you can brand your annual campaign however you'd like. You can use the marketing assets that we've shared in the annual campaign manual in ways that are different than those that are laid out, whatever works for you. We certainly encourage you to take advantage of these new materials, but you are in no way required to. Hopefully the annual campaign guide and appendices will be helpful to you no matter what your branding is. A lot of clubs are asking, can we change our campaign next year? We're pretty far down the road. We're not ready to make this change. How about next year? Absolutely. You certainly can change the annual campaign next year. And in the meantime, your BGCA staff and resources are certainly here to support you. Does our campaign have to last for 3 months like It Just Take One suggested? No. Lots of clubs, particularly larger clubs with dedicated RD staff, prefer a year-round campaign. There are some clubs who like the timeline of a 6-month campaign. The new annual campaign guide includes schedules for a 3, 6, and 12-month campaign. The reason originally that the IJTO was conceived as a 3-month campaign was particularly thinking of clubs who did not have dedicated RD staff, where the CEO is really needing to run all of those RD efforts. And if that's the case at your club, you may still find that a 3-month campaign is the best fit for you, so that you aren't spending the same amount of dedicated time on fundraising year-round. But no matter whether you use a 3-month, a 6-month, or a 12-month schedule, you need to be sure that you make stewardship and cultivation year-round activities. So you should be stewarding your donors from the moment that they make a gift until the moment that you ask them for their next gift. You should be cultivating new donors year-round and cultivating the donors you have to a higher level of giving, regardless of whether you're in annual campaign mode or not. And that's certainly the most true of those higher level donors who you're hoping to keep laddering up their gifts and building them toward an ultimate gift. My club doesn't have an annual campaign. Where can I learn more? Here are a few resources for you. First of all, fundraisingbank.org is a repository of lots of articles, fantastic club samples, and more that can help you to plan your annual campaign. BGCA.net has some great resources as well. You can talk to your Director of Organizational Development, who will be able to get you started from the ground floor up to build that annual campaign as a really key source of individual giving revenue. You can also tune in to Friday's webinar, where we'll talk a little bit more about how an annual campaign works. So that's the new Great Futures annual campaign resources and a little bit about the nationwide Great Futures campaign. At this point, I'd just like to ask if there are any questions, and while we're doing that, to point you in the direction of the downloads for today. Under the handouts pane, you can see two different PDFs. One is Great Futures Annual Campaign Tools Webinar. The other is Great Futures Annual Campaign Toolkit. And as we visit with anyone who has questions, you can download those documents so that you have them available. With that, are there any questions that I could answer for anybody who's on the webinar today? If you should have questions after the webinar or as you're looking at these materials, please feel free to contact me. Here's my phone number and my email address. I'd love to hear from you, and I would be very happy to help you set up your own Great Futures campaign. It is really our belief at BGCA that this is going to be a super new tool to help you succeed, and we are looking forward to working with you and hearing about all of your successes in your annual campaign.